Bora lá! Missão Lua-Marte, estratégias da NASA. E eu cheguei exatamente no horário. Vamos colocar aqui logo. 3h30, horário do Brasil.
Good afternoon, and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm NASA Press Secretary Jackie McGinnis, and as you all know, in just a few days, NASA's Artemis 1 mission is scheduled to lift off from Kennedy's historic launch pad 39B. It'll put us on a path to return humans to the moon for scientific discovery, technological innovation and development, and extend humanity further into the solar system than ever before. The first human missions to Mars.
A primeira missão para Marte depois da Lua, né?
And so our guests today on today's panel
Os nossos convidados,
will tell
então.
you about the work across NASA that will make our goals of long-term exploration at the moon and on Mars a reality.
Exploração então na Lua e Marte.
Today, we have NASA Administrator Bill
Nelson, diretor da NASA.
Bhavya Lal, NASA Associate Administrator for Technology, Policy and Strategy.
Diretora de tecnologia.
NASA Associate Administrator for Operations Systems Development Mission Directorate. Kathy Lueders, NASA Associate Administrator for the Space Operations Mission Directorate. Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, NASA Associate Administrator for the Science Mission Directorate.
Diretor de ciências.
Prasun Desai, NASA Deputy Associate Administrator for the Space Technology Mission Directorate.
Astronauta.
And NASA astronaut Randy Bresnik. We'll hear from each of our speakers and then open it up for questions from folks in the
cada
room,
dos convidados
on the
depois
phone,
abre para
and on
perguntas.
social media.
Tirar uma foto com a galera
You can
aqui,
press
se
star
conseguir.
1 to get into the question queue and use hashtag Artemis to ask your questions online. Administrator Nelson, take it away.
O Bill Nelson vai começar.
Well, here we are. We're going back to the moon, but we're going to live and learn and
Estamos
develop
voltando à
new
Lua,
technologies
morar e aprender
because we're eventually going to Mars.
e eventualmente indo a
The goal
Marte.
was set by President Obama. He gave a
Foi
date
uma meta
of
dada pelo presidente
2033.
Obama.
It's more likely that now, through several administrations into the Biden administration, we'll see that
A administração
landing
Biden também
on
está
Mars
cooperando aí com a
in
ida a
the
Marte
decade of the 2030s.
na década de 30.
But it's a time of excitement.
Tempo de
Just think what's
maravilhas.
happened in just a little over the last year.
Pensa o que vai acontecer aí até os
We
próximos
landed
anos.
on Mars with a rover that's the size of a truck.
Vamos
We flew a little
amarizar,
helicopter
né?
in an
Aterrissar em
atmosphere that
Marte
has
com
a
rover do
1%
tamanho de caminhão.
atmosphere. And then look at what happened starting Christmas morning.
E ver o que acontece
The result
na
of
manhã de
that,
Natal.
after 244 things after a perfect launch had to work, we are getting the first pictures of what will be 20 years of pictures
As primeiras imagens
of
da próxima década, né?
light that has originated in the far reaches of the universe.
Das primeiras
Already you've seen
luzes
it over
dos princípios do universo,
13
como o James Webb
billion
está fazendo, né?
years at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. It'll look back to 13.5 billion years.
13,5 bilhões de anos atrás.
The very beginning.
Princípio das galáxias. Ele está falando um pouco aí das imagens
So
do James
there's a
Webb, né?
big universe out there to explore.
Tem grande universo lá
And
fora para
this
nós
is the
explorarmos.
next step in that exploration. And this time we go with our
Ó, PJ
international
aí.
partners.
Bem-vindo, Pedrão. Forte abraço.
And
Saudades aí
indeed,
de BH.
our international partners are many. And you see on
É o Pedrão
this
da
mission,
Chamarilda e da Chama de José.
the European Service
Responde aí.
Module,
Da PJ aqui.
once we get into orbit on Artemis 4 and start to develop gateway like an outpost or a mini
Depois do
space
gateway
station,
ao redor da Lua,
in
que nós
lunar
falamos na live
polar
passada, vamos começar a sobrevoar
there will
Marte.
be many international partners, and those
Com
will be
parceiros
announced
internacionais,
over
né?
the course of times. And those international agreements are being signed. Indeed, the Artemis Accords setting the standards.
Elas não estão comigo, é o Pedrinho, fala Pedrinho.
Space have already been signed.
Mandei para elas, isso aí.
22
Bota a tia
nations.
para assistir a gente chegar na Lua e Marte, hein?
We do so at a time
É o Pedrinho!
it's a difficult
Beijo,
time
Pedrinho!
on the
Estamos indo
face
pra
of the earth
Lua!
in
Estamos indo pra
Ukraine
Lua! Ó, o Bill
for
Nelson,
very
diretor da NASA.
aggressive
Vamos escutar ele aí.
President Putin has a war going on there, and yet
Tá falando um
on
pouco
the
da guerra
space
da
station,
Ucrânia,
our
né?
Russian
Um
partners,
presidente agressivo, Putin,
the
lá,
professional
atacando um
relationship
outro país.
between
Ó,
the
tem uma crítica
cosmonauts
política aí também.
and the astronauts doesn't miss a beat, nor
Mas na
does it
Rússia, na
the two
Estação Internacional,
mission control centers, one in Moscow.
Estação
and one
Espacial
in
Internacional, lá não tem guerra não. Lá Rússia, russos e
Indeed,
americanos convivem
in
bem,
just
né?
a few weeks, an American astronaut will launch.
Olha o Bill Nelson
Soyuz,
aqui dando aqui uma aula de política aqui
and
também. Hein?
in a few more weeks, a
PJ de
Russian
PJ.
woman cosmonaut will launch
Pedro da Maria
on
José. E
a
da Tia Marilda.
SpaceX, as part of the integrated crew
Então, uma
that is
cosmonauta
necessary to
russa
operate the space station.
vai também na
This mission
SpaceX
goes with a
como
lot
parte
of hopes and
de uma
dreams
missão
of
aí
a lot
também.
of people. And we now are the Artemis generation.
Somos a geração Artemis.
One of our special guests here 2 days from now will be General Tom Stafford.
Tem um convidado lá,
the
um general lá que é
commander
convidado, vai falar um pouco lá também.
Apollo 10. It's no longer the Apollo generation. It's the Artemis.
Não é mais a
generation.
Apollo, a geração Apollo. É a
And that
geração
brings
Artemis,
new
53
discoveries,
anos após Apollo.
A whole new world.
É um novo mundo, né?
discoveries.
Novo mundo, inclusive feminino, né?
And those
Patriarcal.
discoveries are being made now by the people on this panel. And I want you to meet Dr. Bhavya Lal. She is one of the smartest people in NASA. So let me turn it to you, Bhavya.
Thank you, Administrator Nelson.
Passou a bola
As
para
Jackie said, I think about
outro
strategy
lá.
and policy issues at NASA. And it's an honor to be here to be talking to you and on the stage with these amazing people. With the Artemis 1 launch on Monday, NASA is at a historic inflection point, poised to begin the most significant series of science and human exploration missions in over a generation.
A mais significativa exploração humana e científica da nossa geração do século XXI.
Human exploration is grounded in a long-term strategic vision.
Uma estratégia com visão de longo prazo. Uma presença na Lua,
This
com
vision is
Gateway e na
influenced by
década de
three
30,
external
40
factors in
para Marte.
particular. First, incredible growth of capabilities internationally and in the commercial sector that offer an expansive array of collaboration opportunities. Second, robust and growing geopolitical competition that Senator Nelson
Competidores de geopolítica internacional,
nation space activities.
parceria internacional.
And third, a fiscal environment that will require us to optimize our
ambiente
resources,
fiscal que
workforce
precisa
effort,
otimizar os
funding and
riscos.
timelines.
Falou um pouquinho de
Buoyed by
dinheiro
these
aí agora, né?
opportunities, and in discussion with industry and our international partners, NASA is working hard to establish a technically and politically resilient architecture
Uma
for
arquitetura
our
técnica e
long-term
política
exploration efforts.
para esses
The
esforços
architecture
de
has
longo
four
prazo.
interrelated components. The first component is transportation and habitation. We
Transporte
would like to
e
develop and
habitação.
demonstrate an integrated system of systems to conduct a campaign of human missions to the moon and Mars, living, working, and conducting science on lunar and Martian surfaces.
Pessoas
and
aí,
safe return to Earth,
cientistas,
of course.
astronautas conduzindo ciência na
I want to point
Lua,
out
na
here
base
that
lunar
space
e
nuclear
depois para
propulsion
Marte,
is
né?
a key
Então, o primeiro
foundational
objetivo da missão
capability of this
Lua-Marte
transportation
é
pillar. Nuclear propulsion will
o
enable
objetivo
not
de
just human
transporte e
missions to
habitação
Mars,
na
but
base
also
lunar.
scientific missions deep into the solar system. And it would not be an exaggeration
E
to
depois
say
uma
at
base em
all
Marte, né?
that the ability to develop and use nuclear propulsion safely, securely, and sustainably is vital to maintaining our global U.S. leadership in space.
Para manter a liderança
component
dos
is
Estados Unidos
infrastructure.
na corrida
We would
espacial.
like to create
Corrida
a
não, né?
lunar
Corrida já acabou.
utilization
Exploração
infrastructure
espacial.
such that U.S. industry and our international partners can maintain a continuous robotic and human presence on the lunar surface for a
Uma
robust deep
presença
space economy
robótica
without NASA as a
na
sole
superfície
user
da Lua.
while accomplishing Mars testing and science objectives. A third critical component is operations. We would like to conduct human missions on the surface of and around the moon, followed by missions to Mars. Using a gradual built-up approach, we would like to demonstrate technologies and operations to live and work
Então,
on a planetary
tecnologias
surface
e
other than
operações
Earth.
para viver e
Last and
trabalhar
absolutely
no
critical is
ambiente lunar e
science.
no ambiente de
We
Marte.
would like to
De
conduct
Marte, no
science on the
terceiro
moon
objetivo.
and in
O
the lunar
segundo que ela
space
falou
using
bem rápido aqui
integrated
é a
human and
infraestrutura, né?
robotic methods
Os
to
habitats
address high
para as
priority
bases, né?
questions
Onde as
about
pessoas
the
vão
moon
sobreviver.
and demonstrate methods
Então,
for future
o primeiro
science
é o
by
transporte e
astronauts
habitação, o
beyond
terceiro é a
the Earth-Moon
infraestrutura
system.
de
My rockstar colleague and director
sobrevida
of Explorations
lunar e
Systems
marciana,
Directorate, Jim
e o
Free, can
terceiro objetivo
elaborate
de
on
operações,
how we plan to execute on this
os
architecture.
equipamentos,
Suffice it to say
o
that through our
funcionamento
human
das
exploration
integrações,
efforts,
sistemas
we seek
robóticos,
to
né?
imagine
Sistemas
and
robóticos
create
de atuarem na
first
superfície da
ever
Lua e de
missions and
Marte.
approaches that showcase
E o
American
quarto
ingenuity,
são os objetivos científicos que ela está
pioneer
falando agora.
new science and technology, improve long-term
Nova ciência,
affordability,
tecnologia,
reinforce U.S.
testes,
preeminence,
métodos,
improve life on
sistemas,
Earth, and
biologia
address
da
critical
Lua,
national challenges. Let me end my remarks by saying that what we are
superfície,
starting with the launch
geologia,
Monday is not a
experimentos
near-term sprint,
de
but
radiação
a
e outros, né?
long-term marathon to bring the solar system and beyond into our sphere.
Esses são
I
os
feel
objetivos
privileged to be
principais,
part of
então,
this
né?
invigorating vision, and let me hand off to Jim now.
Agora
Thanks, Bhavya.
passou a bola para o Jim de
Good
novo.
afternoon, everybody. It is really
Jim,
a
agora
great honor
você
to
é
be here
conhecido
with all of
nosso aí,
you
Jim,
and
diretor
with the
aí
folks
da
on this panel,
da NASA e
especially my
da
mission
Artemis.
directorate, colleagues and friends. I think I
Então
can say
tá
that.
agradecendo aos
And to
colegas,
be part of the
parabenizando aí.
Exploration Systems Development.
Eu
What
quero
we're
tirar uma
trying to
foto com essa
do,
galera, vou tentar agora,
globally,
hein?
and frankly, to be part of the Artemis 1 team is a great honor for me.
Opa, volta
If I could
a
have the
foto com
first
todos
slide,
lá, por
please.
favor.
We do have a beautiful vehicle out at the pad today.
Temos
although at one
lindo
point we couldn't
veículo
even see it.
lá
It was
fora do
raining
pad
so
de
hard.
39B.
We
Olha que
have
lindo!
a launch team and an ops team
Olha
and a
que,
recovery
puxa, que
team
imagem
that,
extraordinária essa aí, meu
are
Deus!
rested as those folks can be with the hard work they've had and the excitement they have
Que lindo!
ahead.
Deus do
We
céu!
did have our L-2 mission management team. You heard about that today. And the vehicle is so
Tá contando aí que já entrou aí em operação aí de ter menos 48 horas, né?
I know some of you have heard about that. I looked at my phone as close to 2:30 as I could. I told him I was coming on here.
Ele está contando que tá tudo lá, o Call to Stations começou hoje.
It has
da
Artemis
the
potential to have crossed a threshold, but the teams are looking on it. As you can imagine, lightning strike. There are a lot of nuanced parts of a lightning strike analysis that you have to do. So they're working through that now. I'm sure they'll get an answer
agora são
out here this
15h48 no Brasil.
So still work ahead. But we did do call to stations today, as you heard earlier.
Tivemos o Call to Stations hoje, então 10 horas da manhã,
mission is our
27 de agosto.
Test of our deep space
É o primeiro
transportation
teste
systems
aí
before we
do
put crew on
sistema
them.
aí
It is
pro
foundational
espaço
in that
profundo,
sense
que é o Artemis 1.
that we need to learn about
Temos
the
que aprender
vehicles
bastante sobre o
before we
veículo
put crew on them for Artemis 2. It also
para
sets us
aprender aí
up
pro Artemis 2,
long-term
né?
at the moon and on our Artemis campaign going to Mars.
E
I
a
love the way
campanha
the
para ir para
administrator
Marte.
started talking about Mars. But as you've heard over the course of the briefings this week, this is a very risky mission. We have
É uma
I'll
missão
say
de muito
simple
risco.
but aggressive objectives. That is to get the vehicle into orbit, in orbit, and back home.
Levar
and
o veículo para órbita,
We need to
ao
understand
redor da
how the
Lua e
heat shield
trazê-lo para
performs
splashdown
on
na
its
Terra, né?
reentry. And
A
we need to
reentrada
recover the vehicle.
importantíssima.
All of those things are our objectives. I'll say those three objectives. We do have a lot of things that could go wrong during the mission, and places where
Tem
we
algumas
may
coisas que podem
come
dar
home
errado
early,
na missão,
where we may have to abort to come home.
E
That's how we
podemos
test
ter
the
que abortar
system
e
too.
voltar para casa. Olha aí
With
a
that
sinceridade aí
objective
do
of
Jim
getting the
Free.
vehicle back, that is incredibly important as well. So we will be balancing risk, and I say we, look, it's the teams that are launching this thing and operating it and plucking it out of the ocean. Those are the folks balancing the risk, and we put systems in place to understand the risk and know the risk we're taking. But that risk is there because there's great reward on the other side. Going to the moon, studying the environment of the moon, what you can learn by
Ir para a
staying there
Lua,
longer,
estudar aí o
and
ambiente da
developing
Lua,
those
podemos
capabilities we need
aprender
on the
para as
lunar surface
capacidades das
and in
futuras
orbit
missões, é
around the moon.
importantíssimo aí.
It's very much worth that.
Vale
It's
a
even
pena.
more worth it when you consider what Artemis does here on Earth. We talk a lot about what's going to happen in the next 42 days, but the tech development, the investment in state-of-the-art facilities, advanced manufacturing,
O
diverse
investimento no
businesses that can provide
aqui na Terra, dos equipamentos, das indústrias que trabalham também. Tem muito impacto aqui na Terra, né, nesse programa do Artemis. Ele está lembrando aí, né?
That's the field I'm in. That new generation of workers that are going to be inspired.
Nova geração de trabalhadores inspirados aí por esse novo projeto.
Capsule fly and come home. I think will generate as much as the Apollo generation did.
Vamos fazer tanto quanto a geração Apollo.
Benefícios econômicos for science is what makes Artemis different. And we have put science in from the very beginning. I actually got interviewed for Science in Seconds today. I was very honored. I said probably I could speak.
Ele fez uma entrevista hoje para a revista Science, está muito honrado.
But the science is what we're doing from the beginning. Dr. Zurbuchen will talk
Estamos
about some
fazendo
of the science on
ciência
this
desde o
mission.
começo. Esse projeto vem desde 2011,
really
Artemis 1,
get
faz
that
11
central
anos.
to our architecture in the future. The next slide, please.
Aí ele está passando um
As
slide,
we
né?
develop our architecture,
a colinha dele, né?
see the slide. As we
Olha o
develop
slide,
our
temos a Artemis
architecture,
1
as I
aqui.
said, science in mind, right? We're starting with
temos
our
aqui-
rocket, our spacecraft, and our ground systems that get us there. Next slide, please. Gateway, our gateway,
gateway.
in orbit around the moon.
O gateway que vai
has
ficar em volta
science
da Lua.
being built for today by the Science Mission Directorate and our international partners. It's our transfer point, our staging area, the landing system that's going to put boots on the surface for us in
O
development
landing
today.
system,
The rover that will take the
O
astronauts
rover tá
out
aqui
to
do
the
ladinho,
science
o
sites,
rover
both
do ladinho.
pressurized and unpressurized rovers. The suits that they use to navigate
E
through the surface and pick up the
os
samples to bring
trajes
home.
espaciais
We'll
para
design each of those
navegar em alto
elements with
espaço, né?
science in mind. As more science equals more learning about the moon, how it formed, how we can stay long term,
Estudar
how we
como a
move
Lua
on
se
to
formou,
Mars.
como o ambiente se transformou
And as
durante
we learn
o
about the
tempo.
moon and build out our lunar
quanto
presence,
mais a
looking
gente
at our
conhece sobre a
systems
Lua,
going to Mars,
a
we'll
gente
develop capabilities at the moon
acerta o passo
that
para
will
ir para
enable
Marte.
those things to happen. We need the transportation, the habitation, the things that
Precisamos de
Bhavya talked about
transporte,
that we're putting
habitação.
central to our objectives. We're going to be sustainable this time. That doesn't mean we're
Seremos
365
sustentáveis dessa vez.
years. We're going to be able to stay for 30 days and help enable others to stay there while we're not there. But the important part of this is we're going for all humanity. and
Estamos
we're
indo
going
para
with
toda a
all
humanidade.
humanity.
Que
The more
bonito.
nations and companies at the
Tem
moon, the more we
mais
learn,
outras nações
exponentially
junto com os Estados
increasing our
Unidos.
knowledge base and capabilities while strengthening things right here on Earth. Our campaign, our Artemis campaign, is encompassing, and we're excited to kick it off with the launch of Artemis 1, and thankful for you all to be here and,
Obrigado por todos
and
estarem
online
aqui.
today. So with that, let me hand it over to my closest colleague up here, my one that I'm completely close to here.
Opa, momento para foto, momento para foto.
Thank you, Jim. It's really amazing to be, part of this Artemis team. I'd say.
Não deu. Eu queria pegar foto com todos ali. Na próxima eu pego, então.
And here representing the broader team that's out there,
A
really
Cats, então, vai falar
getting all
pouquinho,
this work done. And
agradecendo
I'm
todo
gonna
o
jump to
time,
my
o trabalho
first slide.
feito.
What's important is this team's been getting ready for a while. You have to really prepare and learn to be able to get ready
Aí, ó.
for the mission that's going to be going off this Monday. And we're preparing for the missions coming up. And so here's a great picture of Kate Rubens. Kate Rubens is at the ESA's Pangea training course in the volcanic area, the Spain's Canary Islands. It's another example of the teamwork that the administrator talked about.
Uma área
Here we're
vulcânica,
working with the
uma
ESA folks
astronauta
on how do
Kate
we get
fazendo
ready? How do we
pesquisa
go
lá.
figure out how we're going to go establish the procedures and processes to
Os
be able to go
procedimentos
do the science that Jim talked about.
Para os objetivos de ciência.
Next
Então,
slide, please.
são testes aqui no planeta Terra, né?
Here's
Agora
another one
seja
of
na
my
Estação
favorite
Espacial
pictures because
Internacional.
it shows not only do we have to figure out how to work on a surface, which is what Kate and the team were doing, but we also have to figure out how to live and work in space.
Como
Because
viver num
as we're
ambiente
going
espacial,
and
né?
doing
Tem que,
living
dá para tirar
around
muito
the moon
aprendizado
and
da
on the moon, we
ISS,
have
né?
to figure
Estação
out how
Espacial
to
Internacional.
work in these different gravitational fields and be able to
Tipos
have
diferentes
processes to be able to take
campos
care of the
gravitacionais,
humans that will be doing those missions.
os
And so the
efeitos no ser
International
humano.
Space Station, like the administrator said before, is a place where international teams work together,
Os
just like
times
we will need to
internacionais
have
estão todos
international
unidos,
teams working
independente de
together
bandeira,
and
né?
operating together in the future. If you see there in the pictures, there's one of my favorite things as an ex-New Mexico person, a hatch chili, and you got to figure out how to have food and space to be able to live and work for length of time and space. In addition, in the last picture you saw, Scott giving himself his own flu shot. And so that's another thing we're going to have to figure out how to deal and be able to take care of our crew members and
ele tá falando do outro colega ali aplicando uma injeção nele de alguma coisa ali. Então tem que tratar, comer, sobreviver
e ainda cuidar da saúde deles próprios, né? This is a picture that's a great example of the collaboration across NASA. This is us doing our upgrade of our iROSA solar arrays, which were actually started with our space tech brethren over there, and thank you, Prasun, because the technology that was developed and is being proven on the International Space Station is also being carried forward into the gateway. And so
então, essa tecnologia que ela está dizendo é muito importante dos sistemas de arranjos solares, painéis solares aqui também, que os astronautas estão fazendo. É tecnologia que vai ser usada no gateway lá da Lua. Ou seja, está tudo interligado, os sistemas, todos se conversam, né? Vai ser uma tecnologia que vai ser aproveitada da Estação Espacial Internacional na estação orbital da Lua, que vai ficar em voltinha da Lua, então, né?
I tell everybody, I said, without comm and data and commanding and everything else going back and forth, we don't get the critical science data. We can't command the vehicles that keep our crew members safe and be able to get things done.
Sistema de comunicação, satélite para comunicar com as espaçonaves, né?
And ground stations and
são os sistemas de solo, os ground station systems,
supporting this mission
para suportar a missão.
Critical capabilities to be able to conduct and monitor and collect the data on the hardware.
Para conduzir, conduzir os dados todos do hardware dentro aí dos foguetes e das espaçonaves, né? Sistemas de comunicação são fundamentais.
It's also very important to be able to collect the data from those science experiments that we'll be doing that Thomas will be
talking about. E os 10 payloads, que são satélites que a gente falou na live anterior, né? Para conversar com os
we've got a lot to learn before we go figure out how to live and work.
Que bonitinha essa imagem.
Around the moon and on the moon. And all that will
como sobreviver e trabalhar na Lua, em volta da Lua. Olha só, um laptopzinho com um astronauta lá em solo lunar.
To be able to go live and operate on Mars.
Viver e operar em Marte,
really o objetivo. Great is that here I am with a team of folks that are going to help us go get there. And one of the most critical activities we have while we're doing it is to do our science. And so I'm going to hand over to Thomas Zurbuchen, who will be talking about the science we'll be doing on this mission.
Vai passar para o outro colega lá, então.
Thanks so much, Kathy. And
thanks,
you, of course, talk about that solar array, and I'm reminded that in about a month, DART will hit a little asteroid out there, Didymos, and it's, of course, powered by the solar panel, just like that. Again,
ele falou aí do asteroide vai bater em algum painel solar, não peguei qual é aí. Vai acontecer alguma batida de asteroide aí no painel solar aí.
Yes, we're exploring. Yes, we're doing science. Yes, we're building infrastructure, but we're learning. And what I want to talk about is the learning of science. And I could talk about the robotic missions, including the ones that have mapped the moon for, frankly, over a decade.
Os sistemas robóticos, ele está focando um pouco nos sistemas robóticos.
And have done amazing work. But I want to talk and kind of go back and look at human exploration. And the first image gives you my favorite picture of human exploration. If you hang out with me, you know that picture.
A imagem preferida dele
first slide,
da exploração humana
is a picture of Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz Aldrin! Meu Deus, olha lá.
Science experiment, which is a little foil, an aluminum foil that's correcting the solar wind as it's coming down.
Solar wind, esse aqui é o solar wind equipamento para coletar os ventos solares, as medições de ventos solares. Buzz Aldrin, quem acompanhou aí o pouso na Lua em 1969, Apollo 11, lembra disso aí.
It's so important to me, and what the next slide shows
is that we're going
to a moon that is very different than the moon we left with the Apollo program, because science doesn't stand still. We learn a lot of stuff.
Em Apollo aprendemos muito, mas agora a Lua da Artemis é diferente.
Of course, a measurement by
the Moon
Mineralogical Map,
the
Indian mission in 2009, and of course in a paper of 2018 that shows water resources, two of the CubeSats that are launching with
Artemis 1
os
recursos de água serem descobertos lá na Lua, e tem dois nanosatélites junto com a Artemis dos 10 que vão estudar a água na Lua, né?
Using IR to go look at mapping those resources that are there. It's those resources, of course, that are really, unexpected, kind of in the picture of the moon that we had in the past. Another element that is so important in the science that is done is indicated on the next slide, please, where we see one of the researchers who has built an experiment, in this case with yeast, that is out there, and the yeast being actually primed to be very sensitive to the radiation that is there. You, of course, remember that the radiation away from the Earth, away from low Earth orbit, is different, the space radiation, than the one here, because, of course, there's a magnetic field that deflects a lot of the radiation.
Então é um satélite que vai estudar a radiação. A radiação ao espaço é bem diferente da nossa aqui, que aqui a gente tem toda a atmosfera aqui e o campo magnético que joga a radiação fora. Então lá a radiação solar é muito maior, né? Então é o que esse experimento vai estudar. E a radiação em alto espaço que vai afetar a vida dos astronautas. Podemos aprender aí sobre o efeito das radiações de longo prazo na galera lá em cima.
Kind of biological agents that are up there for us to learn about radiation damage.
O dano de radiação no corpo humano. Próximo slide.
And I want to tell you, when I think of this is an artistic image, of course.
Meu Deus, que coisa maravilhosa, olha isso.
Of the moon, and there she is, and lunar regolith is through her hand as she is there, and what we're thinking about, of course, is the lunar landers that perhaps supported that, the overall artificial intelligence, perhaps even a ground team on the ground that actually, with the enhanced comm that you just talked about, Kathy, will provide information that's there.
Então o homem ele pegando escorrendo a Terra e da Lua pelos dedos ali, né? Ele pensou em toda a ciência para colocar esse homem ali, né? O equipamento de descida da Lua, o rover, sistemas de inteligência artificial que suportam todo momento para conseguir tirar essa foto aqui que eu não estava comentando aqui.
We listened to a presentation, all of us up here, kind of that decadal coming back with these priorities, and there's a lot to learn, but we're excited.
Temos muito a aprender, estamos todos aí excitados aqui com a Artemis.
That human exploration and context of the moon, as I said, that is very different than the moon that we left the last time we were there.
Que é nesse contexto de exploração da Lua, que é bem diferente daquela lá das missões Apollo.
I don't have any recollection of that, and neither do most of people on Earth. So that's what we're going to do now. Tell us about space.
É o que nós vamos fazer. Agora passou para outro colega lá.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, Thomas.
It was a great honor to be here at Kennedy Space Center for this historic launch. The Space Technology Mission Directorate, or Space Tech,
Prasun Desai,
as we go by, shares everyone's excitement for this mission, which is kicking off Artemis and many more robotic and human missions to come. We in Space Tech use our portfolio to develop technologies needed to go, land, live, and explore
então, a tecnologia para ir,
and Mars in
pousar,
collaboration with industry,
pesquisar e retornar.
academia, and other government agencies.
Explorar e retornar.
One of these industry collaborations resulted in the technology that will be flying on Monday. First chart, please.
O primeiro slide, vamos ver qual é.
And California small businesses, Valley Ribbon Mills,
lá em Califórnia,
and Advanced Applied Composites San Diego, led by NASA experts, developed a one-of-a-kind, robust, multifunctional material for the spacecraft heat shield.
Para o heat shield da Orion, né?
That material,
o escudo de proteção térmica da Orion, essa pesquisa aí feita na Califórnia, olha que importante,
they work
legal.
With STMD or Space Tech to mature, test, and deliver this woven thermal protection material for Artemis 1. Next image, please. Lockheed Martin used the material for Orion's heat shield compression pads. Here's a close-up look of what that looks like. If you go to the next image, please.
Olha o escudo, o heat shield da Orion, que lindo, que lindão. Vai atingir 4.000 graus Celsius na reentrada, imagina só, tem que suportar toda essa temperatura na entrada a 28.000 km/h.
These are just two examples of small businesses supporting our next steps in human exploration.
Nosso próximo passo aí na exploração
we also will work with industry to support technologies in the areas like excavation,
desenvolver essas tecnologias importantes aí.
In situ resource utilization and power for the moon and Mars. This past week, we announced awards for 3 companies to create prototypes for vertical solar array systems.
Os 3 protótipos de sistemas solares de energia solar.
We're also working
Foram 3 empresas que desenvolveram protótipos.
Develop power through ongoing fission surface power collaborations with the Department of Energy. This work will yield modular fission surface power systems designed for the moon, and we also plan for this technology to power our exploration on Mars in the future. Exploring Mars will require additional suite of new technologies. For instance, we recently announced a collaboration with the company Microchip Technology to develop a next-generation high-performance spaceflight computing processor.
O sistema de computador de alta geração, né, para os sistemas de voo, está comentando pouquinho desse desenvolvimento.
And advanced fault tolerance, enabling the complex computations we need for future Mars missions and other places in the solar system. STMD is fostering technology to get humans to Mars and land on the surface. We're working with industry to mature nuclear propulsion technologies, which could provide the power and the speed we need to get crewed spacecraft to Mars in a shorter time frame. Once we arrive, landing on the order of 20 metric tons on Mars is also a challenge. Can we go to the next image, please? Our LARFTED mission will demonstrate an inflatable aeroshell technology that could help land crewed missions on Mars. It is slated for launch in beginning of November for a demonstration here at Earth.
Então, os testes aí de lander em Marte, né, são os equipamentos que vão amarizar, aterrissar em Marte, né? O desenvolvimento de uma nave espacial para aterrissar aí em Marte. Amarizar, desculpa.
The technologies that can be used on the moon as well as Mars.
A tecnologia pode ser usada tanto na Lua como em Marte. São os protótipos iniciais, os primeiros
precision landing capability when Perseverance landed, and currently right now on Mars, we're converting the carbon dioxide oxygen from the atmosphere to oxygen that we could use for either refueling our spacecraft.
Agora está falando pouquinho aqui da outra pesquisa de converter gás carbônico em oxigênio.
I want to acknowledge and thank every individual, business and supplier that is helping to make Artemis and beyond a reality.
Agradeceu aí todos os parceiros e fornecedores que estão apoiando a
thousands of
Artemis
businesses and hundreds of towns across this country that are part of this endeavor with us. Thank you.
Agradeceu a todos os parceiros internacionais.
Hand it over to Randy.
Aí,
we have a message from Jessica Watkins on the ISS.
Foto aqui com essa galera aí.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins on board the International Space Station, flying 260 miles above our planet.
Direto da Estação Espacial Internacional,
we have a tremendous view of our planet. It gives us great perspective on Earth itself, but also on the amazing accomplishments humanity can achieve. The space station has been the place where we've learned what it takes to live and work in space.
É uma estação que você aprende como viver e trabalhar no espaço, né? E ter uma nova visão da Terra.
We do on the space station are giving us the knowledge, technologies and
Está
tools
dando aí
we
o conhecimento
need for
e as
Artemis missions to the
ferramentas
moon
para
and for
utilizar
our
aí
human missions
nas
to
missões
Mars and
Artemis para a
beyond
Lua
in
e
the
para
future.
Marte.
To me, exploration is about pushing the limits of what we're capable of.
Para ela, a exploração é chegar nos limites máximos que você consegue.
I'm really looking forward to all the
Até o
science we'll
futuro,
conduct
né?
on the moon. The samples we'll bring back, the knowledge we'll gain from understanding the lunar environment better than we ever have before.
O que nós vamos aprender com essas amostras retornando da Lua
The things we'll find or learn that we
ser
don't know about yet.
fundamentais aí para os estudos futuros.
Our moon to Mars exploration
A
efforts are for
exploração da
everyone.
Lua para Marte.
We'll be watching the Artemis 1 launch from here on the space station along with all of you.
Nós vamos estar assistindo a essa
Good luck
exploração
to
daqui
the
da
Artemis
Estação
team,
Espacial.
the Space Launch System, and the Orion spacecraft.
Boa sorte aí para o SLS, para Orion
Thanks, and now
e
Randy
para
just teed it
o
up for you.
lançamento. Ó, legal, hein? Bonito.
Well, there's a saying in the space business.
A outra
that you
astronauta
never want
falando
to
aí.
be a speaker that follows the astronaut. And I'd like to say I have to kind of add to that. You never want to be a speaker following the astronaut that's speaking from space. But as representing the implementers and the operators of all the science and exploration efforts you've heard, this distinguished panel of NASA leaders discuss, NASA's Astronaut Corps has been involved every step of the way. Embedded in the programs and the directorates, we're there to share our spaceflight experience and expertise in the design and development of these spacecraft, because ultimately we represent the people and the humans that are beyond these vehicles that are going to be making.
Nós representamos as pessoas que estarão nesses veículos e tal, então todo o processo tecnológico que foi falado aí pelos líderes anteriormente são fundamentais para manter a
but the
sobrevivência
human
dos
presence has been
astronautas, né?
involved along the way, because that is the pathfinder for our next mission, which is Artemis 2, which will send humans out beyond low Earth orbit
Ele
for the
está falando
first time
pouquinho
since
da Artemis
1972.
2, que vai
And
levar
so everything
humanos
we're
aí
doing
para
with
a Lua,
Artemis
né?
1, we're looking at through the lens of what can we prove out and what can we demonstrate that'll buy down risk for the Artemis 2 crewed mission.
Para tirar
Certainly,
todos os
as
riscos
Kathy
aí na Artemis
Leaders
1,
mentioned, we're training
para
our
minimizar
crews
os riscos dos astronautas, né?
Earthbound analogs, space analogs, as well as ones that are, taking the ISS, that incredible, space exploration test bed, and using that for analogs as well as testing hardware. One example of that hardware is the fact that we know that Artemis is the sister of Apollo.
Artemis é a irmã da
but the
Apollo.
twin sister of the toilet that's going to be on Artemis 2, that's over in the ONC, is up on the ISS right now, getting tested out and learning more about it before we actually fly it on the Artemis 2 mission. And so that's a great example.
Ele fez uma brincadeira com alguma coisa gêmea que vai ter na Artemis 2 que eu não
astronaut
peguei
office
aqui.
and astronaut corps, in both terms of people and as from their experience. And we're able to harness all those skills and talents and wide variety of them, planetary geologist to military test pilot. That's just one example of, two people in the office, but we've got astrophysicists, we've got educators, we've got medical doctors.
Astrofísicos, médicos, educadores, geologistas, engenheiros, técnicos. Você está agradecendo toda a equipe que tem por trás disso, né?
And so we're using all those talents to be able to go out and do these exploration missions that are going to be taking place very soon on the moon and ultimately on Mars.
Que vamos chegar logo aí na Lua e depois em Marte.
Thanks,
Muito
Randy.
obrigado.
And now we want to hear from you all. So for folks in the room, if you have a question, if
Agora
you could raise
eu quero
your
uma foto
hand.
aqui.
As a reminder for the folks on the phone, if you could please
Eu
press
quero uma
star
foto com a
1 to get
galera
in the
ali.
queue. And online, if you could use hashtag Artemis.
Eu quero uma foto com a galera.
First up, Marcia Dunn with AP.
Marcia Dunn, AP for Mr. Free. I was hoping you could explain the 2-year lag between Artemis 1 and 2. What's driving that? And if this test flight goes really well, can you push up the next flight and make it sooner than 2024?
Yeah, so,
eu fui tirar foto e perdi a pergunta.
The
Vamos ver.
development of the vehicle. So the Orion crew module for Artemis 2 is fully outfitted with all the environmental control and life support systems.
O Orion da Artemis 2 é um pouco mais desenvolvido, a espaçonave, com sistemas de sobrevida, porque vão ter astronautas, 4 astronautas lá dentro, né? Um pouco diferente dessa que vai lançar agora.
Is driving the time between. The other is we're reusing our avionics boxes from Artemis 1 on Artemis 2. So we need to get the vehicle back. I talked about our objectives, getting the vehicle back, getting those boxes out, and retesting.
Eles estão usando tipo as caixas pretas de avião dentro aí do teste da Orion agora 1, Artemis 1, para depois analisar toda essa caixa preta do que aconteceu durante o voo.
And getting the vehicle tested and ready to go to be delivered. So and the stakes are really high for that mission. So we're going to take our time and do it right. So as Artemis 1 has slipped out, that's driven some of the Artemis 2 schedule as well. But those are the 3 things that link it.
Ele falou pouquinho aí das relações entre Artemis 1 e Artemis 2, o módulo da Orion, né?
I think what I'd say is we're going to get through Artemis 1. We're going to learn a lot on Artemis 1. So I could not stand up here and say, hey, let's pull it in. We're going to take some time to go through the data we find on Artemis 1 mission.
Vamos ter muito tempo para estudar os dados aí da Artemis 1 para preparar aí para 2, né?
Best case is we're going to do the right thing to keep the one of the folks down at the end of the table, they're safe when they fly on it. That'll be our most important thing. So I don't think we'll pull it in.
Thanks, Jim.
Para dar segurança aí a quem for entrar no módulo da Orion.
Lauren Gresh with Bloomberg.
Próxima pergunta.
So you talked a lot about sustainability. I was wondering if you could be more specific about what sustainability looks like on the moon. Can we say that is a habitat, a base on the lunar surface? Ultimately, how do you envision people living and working on the moon?
Como vocês visualizam pessoas morando na Lua e o que vocês entendem por sustentabilidade na Lua? Pergunta boa, hein?
I said sustainable more than anybody. It's really what I said. We want an infrastructure.
Queremos uma infraestrutura muito boa para garantir a vida na Lua,
so
né?
You talked about habitats. There's other things on there that we need. We need landing pads. We need communication systems. We need distributed power.
Sistemas de alunizagem.
So it's not really just about, hey, we're going to go and stay
Não só a gente vai e fica
set
lá.
We want
nesse
everyone
longo
to
prazo
contribute
de ficar
to
lá,
it.
né?
So commercial entities, international partners. So the sustainability is we can go, anybody else can go, and we can stay for longer durations.
Sustentabilidade que ele diz é que nós podemos ir, nós vamos ficar e nós
piece.
podemos
We
ficar
can't do
por
it all
um
ourselves.
longo tempo. Essa não é sustentabilidade ambiental, né? É bom a gente não inverter as coisas, né? É a sustentabilidade de vida, né? De garantir a vida lá na base lunar e futuramente em Marte. Né? É a sustentabilidade de vida.
And then what Thomas was saying, the uncrewed piece of it in some ways to optimize science and technology development that we are hoping to get done. And optimizing the use of the infrastructure up there.
Tem muita ciência e tecnologia que vai ser feita para garantir todos os sistemas. E ela reforçou aí, né, que é uma sustentabilidade da garantia da vida humana nesses ambientes.
What we plan to do is in situ resource utilization as well, to live off the land in essence, so we can get a lot of consumables from the environment there in the soil or the water.
Podemos retirar consumíveis ali do próprio solo da Lua ou Marte, né, vamos dizer. Por isso que a água é importante, a pesquisa da água, né?
So just to follow up on that, for whoever wants to take it, there's a lot of talk about the astronauts and the rockets, and that gets a lot of the attention, but things like distributed power and dealing with ISRU and regolith, all those problems, I just wonder, do you feel like you're investing enough in those programs to create this sustainable presence?
So I don't mind starting, and I think Prasun can probably talk about some of the other.
Eu não acompanhei direito aqui a pergunta.
From my perspective, we have to put our plans together now for what we need as we develop the architecture. So we need to put in our budgets today the surface habitation that was mentioned earlier. We need to put in the budget today the rovers that we need.
Temos que colocar no orçamento aqui o sistema de habitação, os rovers, toda a ciência que vai ser feita. Está falando um pouquinho da grana agora, né? Acho que a pergunta foi relacionada ao financeiro, que até agora não teve, né? Na live anterior, falou sobre a missão ARTEMIS, no lançamento dela, não falaram sobre grana também. Vamos ver o que ele fala agora.
In STMD. So are we doing enough?
Já foram investidos 93 bilhões de dólares na missão ARTEMIS até hoje. É dinheiro demais. Só esse lançamento segunda-feira, 4,1 bilhões de dólares só o lançamento.
Can be built as well. So Prasun, I don't know if you want to follow on to that.
I would add, so we are making investments now. We have plans for all the various different types of technologies.
Temos planos aí para diferentes tipos de tecnologia, então eles têm plano A, plano B lá de tecnologia, né? De acordo com o valor.
Power enables you to do everything. So we need to be able to have sustainable power on the surface. And you mentioned, I mentioned we awarded 3 contracts just last week to start to getting that capability. We're developing modular power systems.
Os sistemas de power systems são fundamentais para a geração de energia. O sistema de geração de energia que ele está falando aí para power plant, né? O sistema de geração de energia lá na base são importantíssimos.
Process the regolith and or the water to get consumables that will be useful for us in the future for all
e a água para garantir os consumíveis para a sobrevivência, né? Então é energia e água são os dois pontos principais para garantir a sobrevivência na base lunar.
Advanced manufacturing to do autonomous structure building on the surface. So all these things we are making investments on, and sure. We'd always like to do more than with higher budgets, but we are starting that process now.
A gente podia fazer mais com mais dinheiro, mas estamos fazendo o máximo que dá com o que temos.
Commercial entities and as bigger partners, so not just buy their technology, but think about buying power and some of those as services. So it's the range of options that are being considered.
É só complementou.
Jeff Faust with Space News.
Space News agora.
Hi, Jeff Faust, Space News. Question for the administrator. When you were in the Senate, you helped craft the NASA Authorization Act of 2010 that directed NASA to develop the SLS that's now sitting on the pad at 39B. That bill directed NASA to develop it by 2017, and it's now 2022. From your perspective, what sort of lessons can NASA take away from that extended development of SLS and apply them to future elements of this Moon to Mars architecture so we don't see similar delays in the future?
O que podemos aprender com esses 11 anos de programa ARTEMIS que foi autorizado em 2010 pelo presidente Obama, e o que podemos aprender com esses 11 anos de desenvolvimento?
Extraordinary successful
desenvolvimento de sucesso,
commercial cargo to orbit,
commercial cargo, o sistema de tripulação, os sistemas da
and
SLS.
combination is what has been described to you today. Now, your essential question is, what do you do to stop there being cost overruns and overruns on time?
Ele brincou aqui que o que ele está perguntando é o que ele faz com tudo que aprendeu para diminuir os custos, né? Estamos desenvolvendo novos sistemas, novas tecnologias. Foram 11 anos, lembrando, desde 2011 até 2022.
Need you look any further than the extraordinary instrument we have 1 million miles from Earth, now taking pictures of the universe, looking back in time.
Tá falando um exemplo que ele deu, o James Webb Telescope, daí alguns milhões de quilômetros da Terra, tirando imagens fundamentais do universo primitivo, né?
We are simplifying the system. We are taking, for example, 16 contracts and combining them into one, so that we have one area that one contractor that is responsible for all the subs. We're implementing a program office for Moon to Mars so that we can have better coordination there. We're trying to do all of these things and at the same time do space. And the proof will be in the pudding. But right now, we're on the cusp of something that is pretty great. And it's been described to you from this panel, and you have been seeing it out there, and the hopes and dreams are on that pad 39B right now.
Então, tudo está materializado no que está lá, que todo mundo está vendo no pad 39B materializado. O Artemis 1. Poxa, deu uma finalizada potente aí.
Yes, hi, thank you very much, and good luck on the launch. I do want to ask Administrator Nelson
materializado na Artemis 1, o resultado aí de todos
the
esses
devil's
anos
advocate or critical side, and that has to do with the cadence of Artemis. And as you all know, Apollo had many more test flights of the Saturns and the
Apollo teve muitos outros testes além
desse,
com o foguete Saturno, né?
Much faster before landing and rugged and thermally
Está fazendo um comparativo com a missões Apollo, né?
The administrator can answer back to those who think Artemis cannot or should not move this fast and try to land on the third mission. What do you say to those who think
o que você fala para as pessoas que dizem que a Artemis não está fazendo frente à Apollo?
Thank you, and good luck.
Comparação de Marte com Apollo. É para o Bill de novo. São duas épocas diferentes. 53 anos. O avanço da tecnologia é outra coisa, né?
I have ultimate trust in these people up here.
Eu tenho totalmente confiança nessas pessoas que fizeram esse foguete.
We should launch, and that's why this is a test flight.
É um voo de teste.
And as Jim Free said,
como Jim Free
disse, going to be stressed and tested.
Vai ser teste de
in a way
estresse.
that we wouldn't put humans on this.
Não vamos colocar humanos nesse teste. É um voo de teste, né? Para estressar bem os equipamentos. E atingir os equipamentos todos do sistema Artemis, testar bastante.
You have to bring it back hot and fast to see if that heat shield is going to do
Vamos trazer ele embora, ver se o heat shield funciona, os testes de radiação estão ok.
So that's the difference of 50 years of technology.
Essa é a diferença de 50 anos de tecnologia e técnicas de Apollo, né?
And all the advances that go into this.
Eles estão focando
no
teste,
right down to it,
em garantir.
Space flight is risky business.
Garantir space flight is risky business. É um negócio arriscado. Os voos espaciais. A gente aceita o risco porque tem grandes recompensas também.
To deny ourselves and our identity as the American.
Não fazer o que estamos fazendo é negar a nossa essência americana.
Irene Klotz,
deu uma resposta forte aí também, o Bill Nelson, né?
Thank you. For Senator Nelson and anybody else who might want to chime in, what do you think at this point is the pacing item to get astronauts to Mars in the next 15 to 18 years?
The timetable was set by President Obama. He said 2033.
2033 foi a meta dada pelo presidente Obama. 2033.
The realistic time now that I'm informed is late 2030s, maybe 2040.
A expectativa realista que ele está dando aqui é os últimos anos da década de 30, talvez década de 40. 2040, talvez, o Bill está dizendo, para chegar em Marte.
We're doing testing
O
on ISS
presidente Obama deu a meta de 2033.
Radiation protection for the crew. Obviously, the effects are a lot different, as has been said, outside of low Earth orbit and entry, descent, and landing. I mean, we've landed. I'm probably going to 1 metric ton, and we have to land like 15 to 20 to get humans down there. So, and those tests are much like things we can do them back on Earth, like lofted that Prasun talked about, but that technology has to be developed. And I haven't even mentioned propulsion yet.
Ele está falando que é uma tecnologia que ainda não está desenvolvida, que é para chegar lá em Marte, né? Para amarizar os equipamentos lá, são os testes que ainda não estão totalmente desenvolvidos, então não dá para dar uma data correta aí de quando será. Por isso que o Nelson foi conservativo, dizendo que está entrando para a década aí de 2040, talvez. A chegada a Marte, com humanos a Marte.
So those investments are starting now, but to me,
os investimentos estão iniciando agora, né? Então não tem como dar uma meta muito alta.
About is keeping the crew healthy, both physically and psychologically, for a 3-year tour, right? And when you think about it, it's why
a meta é manter a tripulação psicologicamente saudável e fisicamente apta à missão.
Have crews be able to be on orbit the International Space Station, land. We right now actually have the crew, as soon as they land, go do different activities to see what they can do after being on orbit and
os testes com os astronautas da estação espacial, depois que ele retorna, ver quais são as capacidades que o organismo tem, né, os efeitos que a falta de gravidade faz no organismo. Então são estudos sendo realizados, porque a missão a Marte então, é muito mais longa, né? São 6 meses só para ir para lá, né? 6 meses, mais 6 meses para voltar, são 1 ano no alto espaço, mas os efeitos disso, né? Os efeitos de 1 ano no espaço no ser humano. Então realmente tem que ter muito teste aí, muita pesquisa ainda para acontecer, para se materializar esse outro sonho aí de chegar humanos em Marte, né?
And Radio Canada, Frederick Castel. Can you tell us, you underlined the importance of the objective to land on the moon. What is precisely the schedule once you have achieved this first mission successfully? What is the schedule when you don't have Starship, which has flown once? Thank you.
Falou dos objetivos da chegada à Lua e qual é o schedule, né? Qual é o schedule para se a missão for sucesso, né? Tem Artemis 2 e Artemis 3 que ele está comentando. Tem um contrato aqui com o Starship, com o pessoal que vai fazer os trajes espaciais também.
And technology development milestones that we work and we monitor
SpaceX também que está fazendo
along their development path, and
o equipamento de alunizagem,
né? Understands the challenges that they have, and when they launch Starship, we'll be there with them, watching them develop the technologies that they need to.
Quando a SpaceX lançar o Starship, a NASA está junto aí também com os equipes.
Just awarded our spacesuits contract, which is just as important. Starship could be ready, and if our suits aren't ready, we're not going to land on the moon. And the inverse is the same. If our suits are ready and Starship isn't. But I will tell you that when you get beyond Artemis 3, and you start lining up Artemis 4 and 5, we have a lot of development to go through, and a lot of things have to come together.
Quando chegar em Artemis 3, 4 e 5, temos muito desenvolvimento tecnológico a
some things are going to go on schedule, and some things are going to go fast. But they all have to come together ultimately in that mission. My confidence comes from the fact that we have a human lander team that is, I believe, the best people in the world to understand landing on the moon.
Ele está confiante no time de equipe dele de lander na Lua, que é o melhor time de equipe de alunizagem na Lua. É o único, né?
Just can you tell us if 2025
é o único, é o melhor mesmo.
That's still our goal. That is still our goal. So I talked about SpaceX. We have those development milestones. We just awarded the suit contracts. Part of the way the contracts work for suits is we put task orders out. We just, August 5th, I think, got the first task order responses for exploration suits that have a schedule laid out in those. The team is trying to work with the contractor to put that task order.
Ele está reforçando aí a parceria com os trajes espaciais também, a SpaceX. Ele está com os trajes espaciais e o Moon Lander, né? Ela reforçou a parceria, ele reforçou a parceria.
And we have our structure is the administrator talked about the Moon to Mars program office that we've been directed to put in place by Congress, but we have a org structure today that there's one person I can go point to and say, tell me how things are going on Artemis 3. And that person is tracking all the milestones that need to come together for that. We're still hopeful to make it there in 25.
Thanks, Jim. Marcia Smith, Space Policy Online.
Cool. Mais uma pergunta.
Hi, my question is for Mr. Nelson and Bhavya. When you're talking about the big strategy, the Moon to Mars strategy, doing this in 18 years, I'm curious, how do you balance the interests of the people who just want to get to Mars and worry about getting stuck on the moon, and those who really want to get stuck on the moon because they think there's a lot of stuff to do there and they want a sustainable presence? How do you balance that? How do you come up with a cadence of missions that's affordable and, you know, politically saleable and all of that to satisfy?
Como é que você contrabalança as pessoas que querem a missão para Marte e aquelas que querem focar na Lua, né? São dois tipos diferentes de objetivos. Focar aí na Lua ou focar em Marte. Como é que faz esse balanço?
Moon to Mars to Moon, and this administration obviously supported the continuity of staying on course. I think what we have done is, and we are continuing to do, work with our industry partners, the international partners, to develop a series of objectives. In fact, about 50, and it's under, it's under development and
são estabelecidos então objetivos de longo prazo com os parceiros internacionais.
Emphasize both Moon and Mars
que enfatizam tanto Lua quanto Marte como os objetivos.
Integrated, né? And they demonstrate how doing
eles estão integrados. Demonstram como fazer coisas na Lua
and that's kind of how we are striking that balance. It is never Moon or Mars. It has to be Moon on the way to Mars. Mars
não é um programa Lua e Marte separado. É um programa integrado. Tem que ser Lua e Marte juntos, né? Então toda pesquisa, todo desenvolvimento que está sendo feito é com foco em Marte também. Então é um projeto que envolve os dois astros, né? Lua e Marte. Ela deixou muito forte isso. Não é um projeto um da Lua e um de Marte, não. É um projeto integrado.
What has been explained to you today. And that's how we're going to continue.
E nós vamos continuar com tudo que foi explicado aqui hoje.
Exciting stuff that they're doing in space tech.
Toda essa tudo que estão fazendo de extraordinário no espaço vai nos ajudar aqui nessas missões aqui, né?
Present propulsion. It takes such a long time to get there, and then the planets are out of alignment. You've got to stay on the surface for such a long time for the first flight. You get a faster propulsion, you can go there, stay a few weeks and come back.
Se você tem um sistema de propulsão bom, você vai, fica algumas poucas semanas e volta.
Practical necessity to going to the moon before Mars. You know, you take Apollo and it brought back lunar regolith, and we found out how jagged and broken and destructive that was to mechanical, things in the spacesuits. And, our science folks, with these incredible rovers we have on Mars, we know what that environment is pretty much like. And it's not as difficult as the lunar surface in terms of the mechanics of our rovers' wheels and our gearboxes and our spacesuits and things like that. And so if you think of going to the moon as, a camping expedition and Mars being a further out camping expedition, you're not going to go out to the Alaskan wilderness with just going to the sporting goods store and buying a tent and getting your boots that are brand new out of the box. And you're not going to go out to the Alaskan wilderness without having tried that stuff on yet, broken it in, make sure it works. You're going to go to some local place it's a little closer that maybe you can come back to pretty quickly, come back home if your shoelaces break or something like that.
Ele fez uma analogia interessante. Se você for para o Alasca e colocar todos os equipamentos, botas e tal, casacos e tal, você não vai direto para o Alasca. Você vai para um local intermediário, se alguma coisa der errado, você consegue retornar. A mesma coisa para a Lua, né? Você consegue fazer todos os equipamentos ali e a ciência que vai levar a Lua para depois fazer o pezinho lá para Marte também. Ele fez essa analogia com uma exploração ao Alasca aqui na Terra. Então, os sistemas aí são muito semelhantes, que eles dizem, rovers, sistemas de trajes espaciais e tal.
risk of getting there and the amount of time it takes, not so much on the surface that our hardware will work the entire time we're there, however long or short that mission is.
O projeto é integrado, né? Um projeto integrado.
Thanks, Randy. Marina, Corin, The Atlantic.
O diferencial é o tempo maior que leva para chegar em Marte. E é bom
Hi,
ter
Marina
esse
Corin with
local
The Atlantic.
intermediário que a Lua, o
Two quick
astronauta ali
questions. First, for the
reforçou.
administrator, is this NASA fully, officially committing to establishing a permanent base on the moon in this decade or early the next decade? Do you have a timeline for that? And for
Qual
Randy, as the
timeline para a
person here
base
with the
lunar?
most
Se é essa
spaceflight
década ou se
experience
é a
and a unique
próxima?
understanding of how missions get ready and when they are ready, do you think 2025 is realistic for an Artemis landing?
2025 é realista
There's
para alunizar a
nuance
primeira
in the
mulher
answer
e o
to the question
primeira
about a
pessoa
permanent
negra?
base.
Vamos ver o que o Bill Nelson
Jim
diz, né?
has given you that nuance. Doesn't mean that we are there every minute of every day. We're talking about upwards of 30-day missions, but he said there might be another mission going on at the same time. Also, we've got activities going on Gateway.
Temos atividades,
It's
então, fora a
not
missão
a
Artemis,
permanently,
é o Gateway que está sendo desenvolvido.
Human presence on Gateway.
A presença
It's
humana no
more of an
Gateway
outpost, and yet
é bastante real, uma
could
presença
be,
real.
and
Nesse
there could
entreposto.
be all kinds of new things that we're doing there. We don't know at this point what the technology is going to be
Ele
on
não sabe nesse ponto qual a
the
tecnologia vai
spacecraft
ser
that's going to go to Mars, but it
para a
is
tecnologia para
possible
Marte,
that
né?
it could be assembled in lunar orbit and then go on its journey to Mars.
Mas é importante aí
Jim,
ter
you wanna
esse
add
entreposto
any
ali
of
no
that?
Gateway para
No, sir. I
fazer
think you covered it really well. The other
a
part is,
parada para
the
continuar a viagem a
permanence.
Marte, né? Ele reforçou aí a
That's what
importância
we're
do
trying when we
Gateway.
talk about habitation. And you heard Randy talk about the
Fugiu da
difficulty
pergunta, não
at the,
respondeu
at
se é
the South
realista a
Pole.
data de 2025.
And you've heard many folks talk about the lighting and just how hard it is. We have to decide, you're putting one big habitat down, is that the right thing to do? Because can we get back to it the next year if we have a 2-week launch delay where we wanted to land to get to that habitat? The lighting may not allow us to do it. So maybe we land there somewhere else and drive the pressurized rover to it. That's what the architecture that's going to come out of the objectives that we're talked about is really going to decide, is what is the holistic solution of how much we invest in a single habitat versus maybe a lot of different small campers bigger than the tent. Randy talked about some small campers around as well. So those are the trades we're going through right now.
São algumas decisões que têm que ser tomadas. Se você foca ali no Gateway como grande campo ali, né? Ou em small caps, como o astronauta falou da analogia com Alaska, né?
Was just out at SpaceX just this past week. We're with our HLS program folks and working in collaboration with them on Starship. And you look at the pace that they're working out there. And then you can go online and see, SpaceX working down in Boca Chica where they're manufacturing these things. They're working towards that pace as well. And so that gives great hope that, if we're going to get there, we got the right partner right now for this first mission. We'll find out more in the next coming months because we just assigned that suit contract. And as Jim Free said, the suits and the Starship, the lunar lander, all go hand in hand. We can't have one without the other. So we'll get more clarity in the next few months how quickly our suits are going to be able to come up. But back to the earlier question about what's the difference between Apollo and now, back during Apollo, they didn't know they could do it. Everything they did was new. And we built every flight, and you didn't know if you had to modify the next flight because everything that was being proven on that flight, you didn't know if it was possible. With Artemis, we have the benefit of the technology and experience since then, and we know we can do it. We just now have to find the right people to build it, design it, and then ultimately go out and fly it.
A diferença com a Apollo é que a Apollo a gente não sabia que poderia fazer, né? Era tudo novo, tudo a primeira vez. E agora com Artemis a gente já sabe que consegue, é só achar as pessoas e a tecnologia certa para operacionalizar. A diferença básica em Apollo e Artemis, né? E ele reforçou um pouco aí a cooperação internacional, mas fugiu de novo a resposta se 2025 é uma data realizável para alunizar a primeira mulher. E eu acabei perdendo a pergunta
I'll take the first shot and then
menina aí
have
agora.
Kathy weigh in. I think first is we learned a lot on early shuttle flights and on ISS about microgravity and its effects on our
Aprendemos
systems.
muito na ISS com experiência de microgravidade.
Things we spent years testing on the ground and then launched, and they had issues when they got to orbit. We're going to take advantage of the partial gravity on the moon to test out some systems so that we know how systems on the surface of Mars in that partial gravity act as well. So to me, that's the big theme that we need to get to, Kathy.
I think the other thing is working as an integrated system, working between a lunar orbiting platform and missions on the ground, along with rovers.
Então, o sistema integrado com o sistema gateway orbital, integrado com as plataformas dos rovers embaixo, os ground systems,
power and distribution
tem que comunicar tudo isso aí.
We have not operated, and it goes back to the same thing that Randy said, we have not operated at that level with that 3-day delay, and us getting ready to operate like that then also gets us ready to be able to figure out what are the key aspects of how that operation needs to work to get ready for then applying that when we go to Mars.
Então, aprender pouco aí do gateway
we assembled a space station in Leo,
a alunizagem, para depois tirar dessa experiência aí da Marte.
And we're applying that learning to our assembly of the gateway systems. But this doing an integrated operational function between the lunar gateway and surface elements and coming back and doing that whole choreography, it's going to be an amazing challenge for our operations teams.
Fazer toda essa coreografia de ir para o gateway, alunizar, voltar, ver os sistemas de solo e retornar com segurança para a Terra será de muito aprendizado aí para as futuras missões.
The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I guess this actually is a question for you, Jim. I know you said earlier that you wouldn't move Artemis 2 up. However, let's say, for example, you couldn't do a translunar injection and you had to do a free return. Would you consider moving Artemis 2 up as a second test?
Se não conseguirem ter sucesso na missão Artemis 1 e ter que voltar antes de fazer a injeção translunar, Ter que ter voo de retorno de emergência. Se Artemis 2 vai continuar. Ele diz que é teste crítico.
And if we don't achieve the objectives, we need to take a hard look at what that second flight's going to be because of having crew on there.
O outro voo vai
so
ser
I think we'll look at each of the objectives and each of the systems.
Porque não dá para fazer teste com humanos.
I mean, we achieve all our objectives, right? Hey, we have good confidence that we're okay to put crew on it. That still we can still keep our diligence in building the next vehicle. But I think the what ifs are for us right now probably hard to say. Would we turn that into a different test flight than we envision today? Right now, our belief is we're ready to fly on Monday. We've tested this vehicle on the ground as much as we can.
Tá acreditando que vai voar segunda, testamos o máximo que podemos. Se não tiver sucesso, não dá para falar nada da missão Artemis 2 por enquanto. Realmente é uma pergunta meio inócua, Se der errado, o que vocês vão fazer? Vai ter que revisar o programa todo,
Here in front.
Sawyer Rosenstein with Talking Space. When it comes to Gateway,
ele perguntou aí na live mais cedo também
from Gateway, and you were talking about the fact that there are portions where it will likely be without crew on board. Is there some research or anything that you're hoping to accomplish or that can be accomplished while it is just orbiting uncrewed?
So I'll give you a brief answer.
Falou novamente da preocupação com a missão tripulada,
The advantage of Gateway is its position in the near rectilinear halo orbit.
Então a vantagem do Gateway é a posição dele na órbita retilínea retrógrada da Lua,
a constant communication back with Earth.
Temos uma comunicação fácil com a Terra.
To get to any place we'd really like to go. And always be able to talk to it when it's without crew. I'm sure we're still going to be running systems. So
quando estiver sem tripulação, ainda vamos ter os sistemas operando. E vamos tirar muitos dados de ciência e tecnologia.
So the way we think about gateway is both by looking at the outside of the gateway, but also the inside of the gateway. Both are research platforms, just like on the space station. We have on the inside of
então são duas situações, a parte fora do gateway e a parte interna do gateway.
Ground and then also on the outside. So on the outside, we're going to launch one of the systems with actually hardware already. Science instruments already mounted to it, and it's going to be focused on radiation. Remember, one of the key challenges of Mars, a Mars trip, because of its duration, because it's of its intensity, especially at various levels of solar activity.
Dos objetivos fundamentais é testar a radiação. A viagem a Marte de mais de 6 meses, o efeito de longo prazo da radiação é fundamental. Então tem que testar todos esses níveis de radiação dentro do gateway.
Will be a technology that's essential as we go away from the Sun-Earth line, where all of our forecasting occurs now. So basically, it really is developing capability also with other cross-agency partners to do just that. So that's going to be on the outside. We actually think that there's other experiments. We're actually competing them in a science mission directorate, kind of in our AEOs, announcements of opportunities. Individuals can use the outside of the gateway. One thing you could think about is gamma ray measurements, which are pretty rare, and you won't book big baseline, so it matters that you're away from the Earth for that. That's outside. Inside is a variety of measurements of the type, frankly, not modeled by some of the small payloads that I just talked about. It really also there is looking at the different environment of space that is there, using that as a platform. We're really interested in learning how life evolves in space along all these dimensions, gravity being one of them, from 1G to 0. How we, on that axis, how biology works is frankly very hard on it, like reproduction. How will it work on this axis? The other side.
Além da radiação, tem o efeito da falta de gravidade, né? Aqui na Terra temos G e lá 0. Como que isso funciona na biologia humana, como isso afeta a reprodução humana, por exemplo.
With the gateway and other platforms that we're going to look at. So for us, we think the excitement is big and in the whole science community taking advantage of this. When astronauts are there, we're really excited to work with them. That are there so often, and that helps us accelerate. But much of the science that we're thinking about, frankly, will also take advantage of the gateway when it's not inhabited at that particular time.
Então nós vamos tirar bastante tecnologia do gateway, mesmo que ele não seja tripulado, né?
Thank you, Tarek Malik with Space.com. I think I have 2 short ones, one for Jim for clarification and one for Dr. Z. Jim, you mentioned sustainability beyond a 30-day mission to the moon and with NASA astronauts, and I would assume that some of that is robotic work, like we see on the space station. But is there a concept for crewed flights, either international partners that have their own landing systems that would then use NASA assets on the ground, or even commercial partners with their own missions like we're seeing on the space station now? And for Dr. Z, you said it's a brand new moon since the astronauts left on the Apollo mission. And beyond water and in situ resource utilization, what else can we do now, scientists do now, with the moon to learn new secrets that we couldn't do for Apollo? Thanks.
Além de buscar água na Lua, o que mais cientificamente podemos fazer? Boa pergunta.
Quote the decadal back to me, because see, a whole bunch of scientists are a lot smarter than one scientist, including especially me. So what they're talking about there is talk about the volatiles, but also talked about the modern models of solar system evolution that have some kind of open issues and things that are floating relative to the timing of a phase in the solar system evolution we consider really important, where large planets migrated, which led to a great bombardment, as we call it. At the timing of that, the kind of in time is embedded on the far side of the moon. That's where it's the right place to go look at that. I think the other thing I want to talk about is some of the processes that relate to what we call space weathering. So it's not the same as space weather from the sun with storms and so forth. It's the series of interactions, both chemical and physical, that shape surfaces and let them kind of evolve in different ways. That's a lot more important now, because we're looking at all these planets that are elsewhere and have their different kind of radiation kind of environments. And frankly, we believe the processes can be investigated best
Os processos podem ser investigados melhor da superfície lunar para fazer comparação com os outros países, outros planetas que estão sendo descobertos, com seus próprios sistemas atmosféricos e os efeitos, como que eles evoluem ao longo do tempo. E ele falou um pouquinho da parte do Dark Side of the Moon, parte escura da Lua, onde eles vão procurar água lá, que é uma nova Lua, vamos dizer assim. Agora ele vai falar um pouquinho da ciência aí, né? O que mais podemos descobrir além de água.
We had objectives workshops, both with industry and academia here in the US, and then we had an international one where we brought everyone together to talk about objectives.
Tá falando um pouco dos congressos que são feitos, os workshops internacionais com academias e
other people can
parceiros,
use the things that we have capability that we've built and our capabilities, and we can take advantage perhaps of other countries or entities on the moon to further our missions and make them more scientific rich.
Podemos
more expansive
tirar vantagem aí de outros parceiros internacionais que tirem aprendizado dos nossos desenvolvimentos. Não falou muito aí do que mais podem tirar da Lua.
Associate Administrator Lal, you talked about making the architecture politically resilient. Could you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean it's a simple explanation. Something that just doesn't go 180 every time an administration changes, or something that is not solely driven by political considerations. So we just want stability in our space program. We want something that we continue to make progress and not just go back and forth. I think that's what I meant, but if Senator Nelson or Jim, if
ela falou um pouquinho que o programa precisa ter uma estabilidade, uma continuidade, inclusive financeira e política, né? Tem que ter uma continuidade.
It was accelerated by President Obama.
Novamente falou do presidente Obama, hein? A questão política do Nelson. Sempre agradecendo o presidente Obama, que deu muita força aqui para esse programa Lua-Marte acontecer. Presidente Obama, o primeiro presidente negro aí dos Estados Unidos, ó. Então, parabéns aqui pro Obama também, ó. Grande Obama.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thank you for doing this and good luck tomorrow. I want to ask about Artemis 2.
Boa sorte amanhã.
Also with the previous briefing, it's just going to be lunar
flyby. Perguntando sobre Artemis 2.
Why is that? Why don't you go more bolder? Why don't you go into orbit? Apollo 8, first mission to the moon, went into lunar orbit. On this flight, you're going to be exercising the ICPS and Orion for weeks on end. Why not go with a bolder mission on Artemis 2? Thanks.
Fez uma comparação com a Apollo 8, que foi a primeira missão aí a sobrevoar a Lua.
And I would tell you that every time we look at these, we try and balance risk. So the free return trajectory for
questão de risco, né? E as trajetórias de risco de retorno. Eles estão minimizando o risco aí aos astronautas. Eu estou gostando aí
fly around ICPS, really understand the handling qualities for the operators, the astronauts.
Apollo era outro mundo, era corrida espacial, era necessidade de ir, então o risco. Neil Armstrong tomou um risco danado, o Buzz Aldrin e o Michael Collins.
4 people in a new vehicle with a new ECLIS system is risky.
Espaciais que assumiram o risco de
Having the
agora
opportunity to get them home without absolutely needing the propulsion system and allowing for that failure, that's the free return trajectory. So for us, it's all about balance and risk. So when we add up all the risk on that mission, and we talk about objectives for that, our first objective is going to be getting them back. And with the changes we have in that Artemis 2 vehicle, we believe that the safest, while still having a lot of risk in the mission,
mesmo com a segurança do Artemis 2 ainda vai ter risco. E é isso, eles estão privilegiando a segurança dos astronautas. Ó, parabéns para a NASA, eu disse parabéns para o Obama, parabéns para a NASA.
Said he thought the Apollo 8 mission, that was the boldest decision that NASA has ever done. And, even everything since then. And when you think about what Apollo 8 was, it was the flight after Apollo 7, where they actually put crew in the vehicle and flew in low Earth orbit, and then they went to the boldly around the moon, which we had never done. Well, you think of Artemis 2, it's Apollo 7 and 8 combined. We will not have ever put people in the vehicle, as Jim was saying. And so that's why we're doing the high Earth orbit to check out those environmental and life controls
systems. Então tá fortalecendo aí que vai checar o sistema de controle primeiro, antes de levar humanos nessa eles chamam a órbita de boulder. Eu não captei aqui qual é a palavra boulder.
Combined. And then we look at Artemis 3, which is going to be the combination of Apollo 9, 10, and 11. all in one
Apolo
flight.
3 é
So
9,
NASA's going
10
pretty
e
bold,
11.
just figuring out where we put that risk.
Artemis 3 vai ser a combinação de
second
Apolo
row.
9, 10 e 11. E Artemis 2 é a combinação de Apolo 7 e 8. Interessante aí a analogia do astronauta.
Nicole Mortellero, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. We did touch on Lunar Gateway, and I wanted to ask if you could,
É sobre o
Jim
Gateway
or
agora.
whoever could talk about your international partners and how it will be built, for example, with the Canadarm3.
Right. So our international partners.
Como vai ser construído o Gateway?
Artemis 1 today with the ESA service module and a number of the CubeSats. So we're starting with international partnerships like we're starting with science. So Gateway is the international partnerships there are truly incredible. The ARM, which will help us much like the ARM on ISS has evolved to help us with operations. We were talking before this, Randy shared about the AI interfaces that are going to be used for the ARM, which really expand our capability when we don't have crews present. We'll also have the Europeans will be providing the International Habitation Module.
Os europeus vão providenciar
will be on there, the Esprit
os
Refueling Module
habitats.
that has participation
Tem outros parceiros
throughout Europe.
internacionais que estão ajudando aí. A ISS estão fornecendo muitas
We're talking about other contributions for
tecnologias
Gateway
importantes.
around the
Então,
airlock with
é
our
projeto
international
de
partners.
longo prazo de parceiros internacionais, o Gateway.
That is the hub, no pun intended, really, of what we're doing comes through Gateway, and I think it's built off of the success that we've had on ISS.
Super importante para o sucesso das
learning to work
missões.
together and learning to expand
Estamos
our partnerships.
aprendendo juntos
Kathy, do you have
aí.
anything to add about how it's connected with ISS?
Ele não respondeu muito, não. Fugiu
Oh,
um pouco da pergunta. Não respondeu como será a construção. O que é a
When we
construção com
talk
parceiros
about the
internacionais é óbvio que
continuum
é,
of
né?
space exploration with our partners, people talk about how it started with station and goes through Gateway and then continues through the lunar surfaces and honestly wants to continue through the journey to Mars. So I really feel like, the International Space Station's been a great endeavor to start this alliance of space exploration for the world. And it's really contributed to us to continue to find ways to have multiple folks partnering together in a way that gives
Também
us
choveu numa olhada, está
massive
dizendo aí que
amount
tem que
of
fazer muita
capability
pesquisa
for
junto com a
each of the
SS,
nations
como a
that are
SS
involved.
foi, o Gateway vai ser importante aí, muitos parceiros
Unfortunately,
internacionais
we're coming up on the end of our time
trabalhando
here with
junto,
you.
enfim.
We have time
Choveu
for
numa
one
olhada
more
também.
question.
A
There in the
última
back.
pergunta.
All right, this question is for the administrator and also for Randy. Apollo was kind of short compared to 30 years of shuttle, compared to this, which is, I know Moon to Mars is your office, but once you get there, at what point is this a new era? And to what degree does this go out? And once you conquer Mars, what does that open up for you? And really for the astronaut corps, I want to know, what is the approach of the Corps to potentially going on these missions that might be, like the Moon is, you're there and back. Mars is much longer. So I'd like to know, has anybody thought about that, spoken about that?
Perguntou para o astronauta como é a sensação de ser escalado para ir para a Lua ou para Marte e como é, a Apollo era pequeno frente às missões Shuttle de 30 anos e a Artemis, que é de longo prazo agora, como que se relaciona, né? Vamos ver a resposta.
In 3 days away, something goes wrong, we can hop in a return vehicle, go up to the show and come on home. There's that.
Até a Lua ele disse que é tranquilo, se der algum problema, missões de 30 dias, volta rapidinho aqui para a Terra, aqui, missão de emergência, né? Para Marte é um pouco diferente.
Constant availability. You can send up, logistics modules to the Gateway if we need more supplies.
O Gateway é importante como base para Marte.
Beyond just the hardware aspects, it's going to be a big difference when people are on a Martian vehicle and we go out beyond that point where you can no longer have constant contact with Earth.
Você vai por um ambiente que você não tem comunicação constante com a Terra. É um pouco diferente, é mais punk o negócio, né?
Psychological impact on the crews, and these are things
o impacto psicológico na tripulação é de grande peso.
We're trying to do more with ISS to expand and challenge the way that we do operations, and so certainly we're all up for it. We've used the NEMO underwater experience on an Aquarius, on our Nemo missions, to live down there for weeks at a time. And the one that I was on, we actually had a calm delay of 20 minutes. So we actually practiced these types of things.
Tem que treinar a vida de longo prazo, né? Vida de longo prazo nos sistemas espaciais aí.
And listen to 6 human beings live. You know, can interact with 6 human, you know, myself included. And it was so different when I got back to Earth. And I found that, you know, when I saw people that I'd known for years, I was, you know, it's tough to recognize, you know, put the face with the name. There's just something that you're not around it. You're not practicing that capability and that technique every day. And so when I think about now having, you know, however many people are on the crew, those are the only humans you see and interact with live for years at a time. We better make sure that we have, you know, pick the right crew, make sure they get plenty of opportunity to get to know each other.
Tem que ter uma equipe bem treinada, conhecer entre si, fazer uma equipe bem forte, né? Porque os desafios sobre o veículo espacial vão ser grandes, né? Ele fez um comparativo de quando ele voltou para a Terra, estava no espaço, que ele não reconhecia nem as pessoas direito.
At the core, your question is sort of what happens after Mars, and at the very highest level, our goal isn't just to go visit a place, right? It's to bring the solar system and beyond into our economic realm, right? And that isn't just something NASA
Não é só chegar em Marte. O objetivo é tornar o sistema solar pouco mais
watching, I mean, the entire global space community, all of humanity thinks about this, right? So it's, in a way, it's sort of saying, you know, what happened after the Lewis and Clark expedition? Well, there was so much that happened after
O que acontece
that, right?
depois da expedição lunar? Tem muita coisa a acontecer,
it's harder. You know, we don't have the same sorts of resources, but we have even more resources. And we think about it at NASA on a daily basis. I know there's those in the space community that think about it. You know, we want to learn to live off the land. We want to learn to live off the land for the long term. And those are the sorts of things that we want to do after Mars.
Depois de Marte é ver os sistemas de vida de longo prazo no espaço e por aí vai. Eu acho que tem mais uma última pergunta. Tem uma última pergunta.
Question, Jim Siegel, I'm with NASATech.net. I wanted to go back to the comment that Senator Nelson mentioned at the outset about going to Mars and going to the moon. I find it pretty easy to describe to my readers why we're at the International Space Station, all the benefits, the hundreds and hundreds of benefits that we have gained as a society.
Centenas de benefícios a partir da Estação Espacial Internacional que ele está reforçando.
Doing the same thing for why are we going to Mars, for example. I've heard that Mars has a lot of helium-3 and that can solve the energy crisis and so on.
Está sugerindo a NASA para especificar melhor quais as vantagens de ir para Marte.
Americans are leaders and kind of all of that. What would you tell the average Americans who might be sitting here right now? Why are we going to Mars?
Why are we going to Mars? Por que estamos indo para Marte?
This is what I would tell them.
É uma pergunta boa, hein?
First of all, we are explorers and adventurers as a species.
Primeiro, nós somos exploradores e aventureiros como espécie. Olha que bonito.
The fulfillment of our destiny.
É o nosso destino. Lindo, hein? Poético.
In that exploration, we're going to learn new things and develop new things
novas coisas
that is going to
novas coisas.
Just as it's been under our space program, our lives here on Earth.
Que vai afetar nossas vidas aqui na Terra também, né?
I was with a corn farmer, where we are giving him real-time information on the moisture content of the soil in this crop and next to it, that crop.
Efeitos, por exemplo, plantação de fazendeiros, a diferença num tipo de plantação e outra. Controle de doenças.
And pick up disease in florestas, which then becomes susceptible to fire.
Sensíveis ao
that
fogo.
That certainly is going to help our life here on Earth.
Certamente vai ajudar a melhorar a Terra aqui, a vida aqui na Terra.
Things that we can't even think of.
Tem algumas coisas do programa espacial que a gente nem pensa que pode acontecer, mas tem muita coisa a mais.
When we go to Mars in the late 30s, just think how much more we're going to understand about our solar system.
Quando a gente for para Marte no final dos anos 30, quanto vamos aprender do sistema solar?
Many of our instruments out there, not in the least of which is the James Webb Space Telescope.
Como aí o James Webb Telescope está nos mostrando agora. Né?
We may have, by that time, found an asteroid that
podemos nessa época já ter descobrido um asteroide que a gente tem que proteger a Terra de alguma forma. Né?
But we may have found an asteroid that has valuable material.
Mas podemos achar um asteroide que tem materiais
importantes
para a Terra, né? Podemos
by 2040 we may have detected life elsewhere in the universe.
Até 2040 vamos poder ter detectado vida fora em outro universo.
For exploration.
E pensa o que pode acontecer com essa descoberta, né?
Answer specifically the question what happens after Mars.
Eu não posso responder diretamente essa questão o que acontece depois de Marte. Nós não sabemos e queremos saber, né?
And our discoveries and our exploration are going to continue, and the
nossas explorações vão continuar.
Analogy was given by Bhavya. When Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark all the way the Pacific coast,
quando Thomas Jefferson falou para Lewis
e Clark
a exploração no Oceano Pacífico, olha o que aconteceu, né? E os benefícios que temos hoje, né?
I could add one more thing to that. Completely 100%.
Ele fez as navegações, explorações das navegações,
soft power benefits, right? I mean, we
are
not going alone, Jim, Thomas. Everyone talked about, we are going as a global alliance. And the soft power benefits of our space program are really incalculable and priceless.
São incalculáveis,
so sem preço os benefícios. In a competitive environment in the world.
Não tem lugar no mundo de efeitos comparáveis do que podemos tirar da Lua e de Marte. Obrigado aí pelas questões. Já está terminando. A Megan está terminando aí. Eu quero uma foto com a galera aí.
We have some great coverage for you. Tune into NASA TV tomorrow for a countdown.
Amanhã o countdown começa então para segunda
and
ser
then coverage
lançada a
begins
Artemis
at
1.
midnight tomorrow night with tanking, and we'll be live on our launch broadcast at 6:30 a.m. bright and early on Monday morning. So thank you again.
Obrigado.
Go Artemis.
Go Artemis. Go Artemis. Ah, já tirei foto com a galera, já acabou que não deu mais. Go Artemis! Go Artemis! Parabéns, a imagem da Terra e da ISS. Obrigado, NASA. Vamos aqui já desligar. Show de bola, então. Nossa estratégia, missão Lua-Marte. Estou meio cansadinho aqui, poxa, 2 lives aí num dia só. Deixou cansado também, hoje eu estou sem água aqui para tomar. Resumindo, então, os detalhes aí fundamentais de quais são as estratégias, tanto para o Gateway, a base lunar, como a futura aí da Marte. Esse finzinho aqui foi espetacular. Quais são... why go to the Mars, né? Por que ir a Marte e o que tem além de lá? A resposta do Bill Nelson foi bonitinha, né? Nós somos exploradores, é o nosso destino ser explorador. O que tem além dela, nós não sabemos. Podemos descobrir vida no sistema solar, podemos aí tirar aí controle de doenças, efeitos aí na plantação de comida, e outros benefícios mais que ele falou também, controle de florestas e outros mais. E coisas que não podemos nem imaginar, né? Coisas que não podemos nem imaginar, que o James Webb está mostrando aí agora, imagens do universo primordial há 13,5 bilhões de anos, das primeiras galáxias. Enfim, ele até disse, não dá para eu responder, né? O que temos lá fora, temos que descobrir, temos que continuar. E somos exploradores, bonita a mensagem do Bill Nelson, nós somos exploradores aventureiros como espécie, né? Linda, bonita, hein? Bonito o recado final aí da NASA. E falaram aí vários vários desafios, os challenges, né, das missões aí, tanto a missão Artemis 1 como a 2, focaram um pouco na 2 aí também, com os astronautas, e a NASA sempre colocando aí, dizendo que, olha, calma, Apolo, lá nós conseguimos, fomos 53 anos, foi porque agora estamos em voo de teste, tal, qual que é a diferença, né? A diferença é fundamental. A NASA está colocando bem claro que é a preocupação com a segurança dos astronautas. Então é um voo de teste, vai testar, estressar bem a espaçonave, ver a reentrada, tudo. Essa que é a preocupação da NASA com a segurança dos astronautas, e eu achei bem legal, aplaudo a NASA por conta disso, além de ter o valor da inclusão, que nós comentamos na live anterior, de levar a primeira mulher à Lua, a primeira pessoa negra, no valor de inclusão iniciado em 2020 pela NASA. Parabéns também pela preocupação com a segurança dos astronautas, efeitos da radiação, longo prazo, as viagens para Marte são muito maiores, né? Comunicação menor com a Terra, então a galera vai lá, são exploradores mesmo, tipo das grandes navegações, vai e não sabe nem o que vai encontrar por lá. Tem que ser pessoas que arriscam a vida mesmo, né? Então, enfim, meses de duração a viagem, tem que testar, tem 3 manequins, a Helga Zorg e o capitão, que vão ser testados lá também, os manequins, os efeitos da radiação, de alta radiação no espaço de longo prazo, né? Então, estou com a NASA. Testem bastante, teste agora a missão Artemis 1, para depois colocar a gente lá. Segunda-feira, amados, 29 de agosto de 2022, faltam 3 dias, então, às 9h33 da manhã começa a janela de teste para o lançamento, fiquem atentos. Eu estou achando que talvez pelo que eu observei de todo o programa aí, eu acho que ainda vai ser tipo um teste final, 29 de agosto, e nós vamos aí para 2 de setembro, que é a próxima janela, ou quiçá 5 de setembro também. Enfim, vamos ficar antenados, e Deus abençoe Artemis, Deus da natureza, e que tudo dê certo aí, e amém.